I want to go see Mark Meckler.
You gotta have
He's hanging out with the
a
troops.
lot of heart, and you gotta really want to.
Thank you guys for being involved. Oh, thank you very much. Hey, what's your name?
Dave Barlett.
Dave, nice to meet you. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Really great. That's right.
Oh, really? Cool. That's awesome. Well, I'll see you on the battle cry. Everything you're doing. Well, happy to come back anytime. I like it here. So it's a great.
And how about Blink Radio? The scheduler for Blink Radio?
I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, for sure. You're wearing your Big Government Sucks button. I like that too.
And also there's a Big Government Suck right here too, my daughter.
My daughter is speaking at a TP USA conference this weekend about convention states, so she's there in the Midwest. We're gonna do a family picture here.
Mush up.
Right here.
We started Tea Party about 8.5, 9 years ago. Get a chance. It takes about 2 minutes. Go on our website, PalmBeachCountyTeaParty.org. You will find information on who's running, who's not running, any information that you might ask.
But today I'm convinced that really it is an integral part of our future to get the Convention of States rolling, to use that Fifth Amendment in the way that it was designed, Article 5 in the Constitution was designed to be used. Because without term limits, you're going to have guys like Charlie Rangel, who sat there for 60 years, and all of these incumbents who have no desire to get out. They like the lapel pin, they like getting upgraded to first class. They long since went back to their home districts, right? You know, the measure of your congressman or congresswoman is how often do you see them in your district? I see Congressman Mast in his district every week. He still calls this home. And if you have a congressman like I do, who only comes when the movie cameras or the TV cameras are there to film a horrible event, then you have the wrong congressperson. If you never see your congressperson at gatherings like this, get rid of them. Vote them out. I don't care what kind of initial they have after their name. I don't care if it's a D or an R. If they stop serving the community, send them home. The Founding Fathers gave us elections for Congress every 2 years. You know why? Because if they can't get something done in 2 years, they ain't going to get it done in 20. So now, to explain how he convinced me, and hopefully how he'll convince you, that a convention of the states is vital, let me introduce Mark Meckler.
Man, it's good to be in South Florida. So, I don't know if you guys know this, but I am from the lost continent of California. Sorry. You know, I gotta tell you, growing up, there was a time I would travel around the country on business, and I would tell people that I was from California, and they would get this faraway look in their eyes and say, wow, I've always wanted to live in California. But for the last probably 8 to 10 years, you tell people you're from California, that response you just gave me, it's universal. I could be in an airport and I tell somebody I'm from California and they say, oh, I'm sorry. Of course, those are the conservative folks, so I always know that's the way I know who I'm talking to. You know, what I wanted to talk to you guys today about is history. And I want to do quickly, because I've only got about 15 minutes, the entire span of American history for you. Right? I know it's hard to do that in 15 minutes, but I think it's really important that we remember our history as we head into this election, right? Does everybody agree that this is a historic election for us? Okay, so it's important to tie that all the way back in American history. You know, American history is the story of the impossible. This is such an interesting thing to me. If you look back to the founding days, right, before the American Revolution, as we were leading up to the American Revolution, most people in America and most people in the world thought that America was impossible. A ragtag gang of merchants and people who were farmers and workers decided to rise up against the greatest military empire in human history, right? That's the story of America. That's where it begins. But it actually begins a little bit before that, and I think this is really important. When I started studying early American history, I wanted to know why. Why did they rise up and fight against tyranny? What was it in them that was so different? You know, the American Revolution is different than any other revolution in human history. It's different because revolutions are usually fought by people who've been enslaved who would like to be free, right? That's the history of revolution. But the American Revolution is fought by free men and women who want to retain their freedom. And it looks like they're going to lose their freedom. So where does this fight come from? And when I started to read about the period before the American Revolution, if you want to read about it, great historian by the name of Bernard Bailyn wrote a book called The Origins of American Political Ideology. Now this is what I read, which was so fascinating and surprised me immensely. When you read what they were writing in the colonies about the British government, they hated the British government, right? Wrong. Wrong. They actually loved the British system of government. They write, and you'll find this phrase over and over in the writings of the early colonies. They say the British system of governance is the best system of governance ever designed to preserve the liberty of man. Why? Because they had a system, as they described it, of separation of powers. They were talking about the monarchy, the House of Commons, and the courts. But they also had a complaint. And I think this complaint is instructive for us. Their complaint was this. They said they had this finest system, but all three branches of government had conspired against the common man to work together against the interests of the common man. And they were complaining about crony capitalism. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Okay, so this is incredible. This is right before the American Revolution. In the period leading up to the Revolution, they are complaining about the same things we're complaining about. In other words, the pre-revolutionary moment, prior to the original American Revolution, they're complaining about the same things we're complaining about. And I would posit that we are now in a pre-revolutionary moment. Do you guys agree with that? So this is important that we know that entire span of that history. We get into the Revolution, and after the Revolution, there's a historian who's traveling around. His name's Mellon Chamberlain, and he comes across one of the original Minutemen who fought in the battles at Lexington and Concord. This is in 1843, so a long time after the Revolution. And as he interviews this captain, Captain Levi Preston, he asks him, why did you fight in the Revolution? He asks him, was it the Stamp Act? And Captain Preston says, I never bought any of them. The governor locked them in the armory, and we never heard of them after that. Was it the tea tax? He said, I was a farmer. We never drank any tea. We drank coffee. He asked him if it was the heavy hand of British tyranny. He said, never felt a whit of it. And he asked him, were you reading the great revolutionaries like Milton and Burke? And he said, we never heard of those men. We read the Bible, the Psalms, and the Almanac, and that's all. Chamberlain, in exasperation, can't figure out why he would have fought. When Captain Preston went to fight on those days in Lexington and Concord, he was 23 years old. He was a farmer. He had no real military training, but he was willing to take his musket and go to the field of battle. And when Chamberlain asked him why, Levi Preston sums it up with what I think is the best summary of the American political philosophy, not only of the Revolution itself, but of all American history, including our philosophy today. And he said this, when I went to face them redcoats, I meant only one thing. We had always governed ourselves, and we always intended to. And those redcoats, they intended that we shouldn't. Right there, the summary of American political philosophy, different than anywhere else in the world. And I would argue that today, we are in the same boat. In Washington, D.C., they think that we should not govern ourselves, but we think we should. Do you agree with that? We are a self-governing people, and this is what we are about, and this is what is at stake in this election. And you have, now I'm going to jump way ahead in history, you guys have a modern history that you need to be very aware of. In 2009, the Tea Party movement starts. Who was here at the first protest in the Tea Party movement? There's a whole bunch of you. Thank you guys. Give yourselves a big hand. You guys did something historic in American history, never done before. Right? So the Tea Party movement starts. People come out in force. February 27, 2009 is the first round of Tea Parties. Most people don't even know about those. 35 of them across the country. 39,000 people participate. History is made. April 15, 2009, there are 850 Tea Parties around the country. About 1.2 million people come out. Today, by the way, so you know, most people don't know this, the biggest single-day multi-city protest in world history. You guys did that. Give yourselves a hand for that. That's incredible. Okay, that's impossible though, right? We didn't have any money. We didn't know what we were doing. We were not organized. We were just people standing up and acting in defense of our nation in the name of our Lord God who gave us this country. That's what we were doing. It was impossible, they said. And then they told me, as one of the leaders, we were going to go home and we were going to be gone, and it was cute what we did and everything, but by the time the elections rolled around the following year, we wouldn't be involved anymore. And in November of 2010, you delivered the biggest swing class in the history of the United States Congress from party to party since 1938. That's incredible. Give yourselves a hand for that. You guys did that. Now here's the sad part of the history story. Because we all thought that when we did that, everything would change, right? I was pretty excited. I went to Washington, D.C. We held a big party on Capitol Hill. We thought, man, they have no idea what just happened. The reality is we had no idea what was about to happen. Because they got there and the swamp ate those guys alive. And nothing changed, really. And so we had done this historic election and nothing changed. And then they told us, you know, if we would only just give them the Senate, then everything would be different. And you guys did it again. You went out and you worked and you raised money and you gave money and you voted and we gave them the Senate. And then nothing changed. And then they said, well, if we just had 1600 Pennsylvania, if we only had the White House, everything would be different if we had the White House, because, you know, we could put bills on the president's desk and we've been doing that and he just doesn't sign them and nothing happens. And so you guys did something that they said was impossible. Anybody remember people saying, Donald Trump will never be president? Yeah, I remember hearing that a lot. By the way, I saw one of the security guards we were wearing the same socks today. I'm a supporter, in case you wondered. So we were told it was impossible, and I remember election night thinking, man, this is the best impossible I've ever experienced. It was an incredible night when Donald Trump was elected president. It was incredible not just to see Donald Trump get elected president, but honestly, it was at least doubly or triply incredible to see Hillary Clinton not even give a concession speech. I enjoyed that immensely.
And the henchmen and the puppets of the progressive liberal politicians began to attack our movement in every possible way that they could attack us.